A lot of times people say fasting doesn't work for them. It's because they tried 16/8 and that's all they tried.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Kingdom Fasting Podcast. I am Brianne Sims, RN, and this is my husband Sam Sims.
Dr. Sam Sims, nurse anesthesiologist. So happy to be here.
Yeah, and we're continuing this series on what is fasting and why does it matter to me. And so today we are talking actually about the different types of fasts and different types of fasting that are out there.
So you'll hear a lot. One of the easiest ones, one of the most common ones you hear about are time fasts. People will fast for a certain time. A 12-hour fast is actually how we used to normally eat in the 1970s. We would eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We wouldn't snack in between, and we would fast for 12 hours at night and eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so, actually, we didn't have an obesity problem back then. So, a 12-hour fast is actually a very healthy way to eat. It's pretty easy to do. So, the easiest way to start fasting is through a 12-hour and just don't snack in between your meals.
Right.
Then a lot of people hear about 16/8, which basically is skipping one meal. Most people like to skip breakfast. It's usually easier to skip breakfast. But some people like to skip dinner. So 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours, an 8-hour eating window. You can consume a fair amount of calories in that 8 hours. So some people don't get results with 16/8. They're more of a maintenance fast.
And when you say maintenance, you mean like a weight maintaining fast.
Yeah, weight maintaining fast. So some people will eat all the calories they burn in those 8 hours. So some people will. A lot of times people say fasting doesn't work for them. It's because they tried 16/8 and that's all they tried.
They just did a shorter fast and ate as much food as they normally would in that same amount of time frame. So
there's these things called 5-2 fast, where basically you fast on the weekends, 2 days. Typically, those when you find those, they'll be close to what I'll talk about here in a minute, called fast mimicking, where people eat like less than 500 calories a day. I don't know. I don't really do 5-2 fast. Not really something I really would enjoy. But some people really have some good results.
Yeah, we tend to fast when we're busier during the week, and then on the weekends enjoy meals together. So, but other people
fast for 5 days, and we
are opposite of that.
And most of it spend our weekends. 20 to 24-hour fast are like OMODs, 1 meal a day.
A lot of people find success with those.
Honestly. Yeah, and typically dinner is when people typically eat. That works best for me if I'm doing an OMOD or a 24-hour fast. And then I try to end my fast. I try to pick an end time, and I try to stop eating around 8 o'clock typically, unless I'm celebrating something. 36-hour fasts. These are actually where you skip breakfast, lunch, and dinner, go to sleep, and the next morning you'll eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you actually have 36 hours of no food.
So you go an entire day during daylight hours, during waking hours, without eating anything. So you sleep, don't eat anything, sleep, and then eat.
Yeah. So. And that's hard the first time you go to bed without food. But when you wake up and you're not hungry, you realize, oh, I didn't actually need to eat. So
kind of shocking.
Yeah, those kind of were the first time it was kind of difficult, but I actually started liking those. And then with those...
36-hour fasts are really good for weight loss as well. Yeah.
And then 42-hour fasts are, you extend that, instead of eating breakfast that morning, you actually wait to eat lunch. Yeah. And I started doing 42s after I did several 36s and was realizing I wasn't hungry, but I was eating breakfast. I'm like, well, why am I eating if I'm not hungry?
Right, because it was just like, well, I'm only doing a 36-hour fast. But then you eat breakfast when you're not hungry. And so that's one of our big things is we always recommend not eating when you're not hungry.
Yeah.
If you're not hungry, don't eat. Fast. It's okay to not eat when you're not hungry. So that's why we end up doing more of the 42-hour fast.
Yep. And the 42s then quickly, those transition into 3-day fasts and then some longer fasts. And that hunger hormone actually goes away. And then 3 days up to a 40-day fast, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah. And a lot of people tend to do like a 3-day fast, a 5-day fast, a 7-day, a 10-day, a 14-day, 40-day. Because those are a lot of the traditional fasting numbers in the Bible that God uses, and so there's a lot of meaning behind that. So those are.
And a lot of times you feel really good when you're doing these longer fasts.
Yeah.
Especially when your pinch points get any pinch points on your side. They're like, oh, it's shrinking quickly. Yeah. So that's kind of nice, and you're not hungry. Then there's this thing called fast mimicking. There's a lot of research on fast mimicking. Fast mimicking is typically you eat. It's caloric counting while you fast, so you actually have some food, and it's very strict. It's regimented. There's certain fats, carbohydrates, and proteins you can have. Usually less than 500 calories in a day for a week. But because you're always consuming something, typically your ghrelin hormone or your hunger hormone doesn't go away. So people who do these fasts, when I talk to them, they say, I was hungry for a whole week, like every single day. I was just hungry, just nonstop. And so that sounds actually kind of miserable for me. My ghrelin actually goes away. It's usually gone by day 3 completely. So, but pretty much gone. My body switches quickly now over to fasting, so I don't really get that hungry that often. They have products for this, but they're expensive. So being hungry all the time, an expensive product, but they've done some research on this and found that people have had really good long-term results, even with just like 1 week of fast mimicking. They've had health benefits, um, positive health markers,
similar to fasting.
similar to fasting,
Without food.
3 to 6 months later.
Yeah.
And so from this, we actually developed what we call fasting fuels. There are certain things that you can actually consume that won't break your fast. We use them as tools to keep fasting, not ways. Fast mimicking, I feel, is a lot of times a way of cheating while you fast. And fasting fuels are a way to continue fasting. And from that, there's a thing called fat fasts, and that's where you only consume a little bit of fat. Fat has very low insulin response, and that's why people will have a little heavy cream in their coffee, some raw nuts, and so we're going to go into
Things
fasting
like
fuels
that don't
later.
actually break your fast.
Right, and then there's a thing called complete fasts or dry fasts, where you don't eat any food or have any liquids. We don't recommend those more than 24 hours. These are typically religious fasts. They shouldn't be done routinely. They usually just dehydrate you. There are 3 examples in the Bible where people did a 3-day fast with no fluid and no food.
Right.
Esther is the most common example. Esther fasts without food and water for 3 days, and then it saves the Jewish people for the Feast of Purim now.
Yep.
Paul does it in crisis when he on the Damascus Road after he has the encounter with Jesus, and then he's
blind.
distressed.
Yes,
and,
because he's blind.
because he's blind, and so he actually doesn't eat or drink for 3 days and prays. These are not active situations. And then the other time that I know of in the Bible, and there may be a time with Gideon, but this one specifically is David. Actually, he comes back. He's helping the Philistine army. He actually comes back, and his town has been ransacked, and they've all left, and so they go chase after the army that took all their wives, and they come across a guy that hasn't got left behind because he was injured, and he hasn't any food or water in 3 days. And then they feed him and give him water, and he helps them get their families back.
Right,
So we have 3 examples of people who not very active, but did survive a 3-day fast. So nothing I would recommend.
From food and water.
From food and water, but not something I would recommend. Unless,
right. Unless you're specifically directed by God to do that.
Yeah, something definitely be a prayerful thing.
Yeah.
So those are all the kind of typical food and liquid fasts and times. But then Brianne's going to talk about there's actually another kind of fast that we also do.
Right. So I want to talk about non-food fasts because yes, fasting typically in the Bible is fasting from food or drink, those types of things. But lots of times God calls us to a specific fast because those things that he wants you to fast from have become an idol in your life, or they're taking place of things where he wants to be or where he wants to work. And so a lot of times he'll have us fast from things that are not necessarily bad, but just not healthy for us, or we're having too much of them or whatever. And so one example is actually before we started fasting, before we even knew about fasting, we were going on a family vacation, and I felt very strongly that we were not supposed to have any screens on this vacation. And so we didn't. We only used our phones for texts and phone calls, and we didn't watch any TV, we didn't play any video games, we didn't watch the news, so we just fasted from all screens, completely, 100%, on this family vacation. And it was when our kids were younger and stuff, and it was one of our best family vacations ever, because we spent so much more time connecting with each other and praying and just really enjoying and being in the moment. Fasting can be positive, when applied the right way in your life, and you're really able to connect more with other people and with God. And that's kind of the thing, is that fasting helps us shed more of the world and and desire and have more time for God.
Well, I want to mention one of the things on that trip was we actually listened to a book together in the car.
Yeah.
And rather than the kids like immediately getting on their screens as soon as they get in the car, as soon as we got in the car, like, can you turn the book on? Can you turn the book on?
They did. They were like, "Can we listen to the book? Can we listen to the
Yeah.
book?"
So, it was
And
a
so
book
that's
we had a book that we all read together and finished it at the same time. So that was really fun.
Talked about that, enjoyed that, yeah. So that was really fun. And you get more chance to like see the countryside when you're on a road trip and you're not on your screen. You actually get to enjoy more of God's creation, be outside more, and just
So
We
fasting,
just really
and
enjoyed
one
that.
of the easy ones for people like now is like fast for social media. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of people do that for Lent anyway, but it's like,
Yeah.
maybe you're supposed to fast on social media.
And we also had another specific fast where I had to fast from all the games on my phone that were addicting and it just time suck, just literally a time waste, And I'm happy to say that I've never gone back to like playing any of those games on my phone. Like that broke me of that
Mm-hmm.
bad habit of just wasting time on my phone, looking at a screen instead of doing the other things in my life that I needed to do, that were more important, the things that God had for me to do than just wasting time and money on games on my phone.
Well, speaking of money, this last January we did basically a no spending, right? And we tried to spend, you basically only buy foods that you need, but a lot of times we ate a freezer.
Yeah,
And-
that was super interesting that God had us do a fast from buying anything. And we just had to make do with what we had. And so that was really eye-opening and really helpful because that was right before we went on a mission trip to Uganda. And we were able to save some of that money to use there and just really understand a little bit better like how they live their lives and not.
Well, in addition, because we fasted from that, then when we were gone, then we were able to pay our bills the next month because we were on vacation, we were working, so.
Yeah. So when he called us to that fast in January, actually, I didn't know that I was going to Uganda. And so the thing is, when we listen to what God wants us to do and how he wants us to fast, he's preparing us for something. And he was preparing me for that trip, and I didn't realize it, and he was preparing our hearts and our finances for that trip too. And so fasting the way that God wants you to fast is key. And there are many ways to do that. And so if God calls you to fast from something and you're like, that's kind of odd, he has a reason for it. And he has a plan. So trust.
So we've talked about different types of fasts and how you can fast. And next episode, we're going to talk about, is there a wrong way to fast?
If you enjoyed this podcast, we would love it if you subscribed, and especially if you would share it with a friend. We'll see you next time.